Let's make sure you can hear me. Hi, everybody. How are y'all doing today? Jax James, NORML State Policy Manager. I'm here and very happy to be here today. I hope everybody is celebrating. I am currently celebrating with my Willie Nelson mug, enjoying some really hot coffee because I'm going to need it to make it through the day. If you guys have been watching what is going on, you have seen that the MORE Act has passed the House. So in the description of this live stream, that's going to be the first link that you'll see there if you want to read up on what does the MORE Act do, how did the vote go, what do we expect in the Senate. Make sure you click that link. Really great news today to be able to see that the House has passed the MORE Act. It's a historic vote. It's only the second time in more than 50 years that Congress has acted to repeal federal cannabis prohibition and to allow states to chart their own path. So this is extremely important legislation that provides for expungement and resentencing of federal nonviolent marijuana convictions. It promotes diverse participation in state regulated cannabis industry. It also helps repair the racially and economically, let's say it right, y'all, economically desperate harms that have been caused by these decade-long prohibition policies across our states. So this is really excellent news. If you guys were watching last week, you saw Morgan, who is our political director and is working on our federal policy. He talked a little bit about the MORE Act. He encouraged everyone to reach out to their legislators. I know that I have been emailing all of my contacts in Texas, making sure that they're letting our representatives up in DC know how we stand on this policy issue. So very exciting times, friends. Historic. Happy to be here with you to chat a little bit about it. I'm mostly here to talk about state policy updates because that is my purview. But I would be remiss if I didn't highlight some of the amazing things that are happening at the federal level right now. So now it will move over to the Senate. So it's not the time to just party and be happy. There's still work to do. So party and be happy, but come back and participate in our actions that we'll be doing, focusing on the Senate to make sure that this legislation can make it through both chambers. You know, we can't take anything for granted on this legislation, especially in the Senate. You know, we have to work really hard for every single vote. So on that note, let's talk about state policy. So you guys know I love to see where you're coming from in the comments. So if you get the opportunity, please drop your state in here. I see we've got someone from Pennsylvania. I'll be talking about that state today. Let's see. We've got some Maryland people here. I have a update for y'all as well. So make sure you click that first link. Check out our blog on the MORE Act passing today, less than an hour ago. So historic news, but let's keep our feet to the pedal and make sure that we are engaging with our senators up in DC so that they know that you want them to vote to advance this legislation as well. All right, I see people from Georgia going to talk about you today. Tennessee, New Jersey, Kentucky. Oh, my Texas people. Hello, Texas people. I was happy during the MORE Act conversation today to see several Texas Congress people discussing the importance of this legislation. So, you know, go Texas. I know we probably didn't have everybody supporting it, but it's nice to know that we have some people that understand that public perception and public opinion has dramatically changed on this, and there is overarching support for this across many different states. So let's dig into state policy, shall we? The second link in the live stream is going to talk to you about, or is going to take you to our update for this week. And we're going to highlight quite a few different legislative advancements. You know, we like to do our highlights and then items of additional note. So the first highlight I want to talk about today is in Georgia. So in Georgia, those with qualifying medical conditions can have up to 20 ounces of infused cannabis oil, but they can't contain more than 5% THC and an amount of CBD that is equal to or greater than the amount of THC. The law permits the establishment of up to 30 state licensed retailers for these high CBD, low THC oil products. And no retailers exist in the state right now. So this leaves qualified patients without access to their medicine. So legislation is pending in Georgia, House Bill 1425 and Senate Bill 609, to revise the provisions relating to these production licenses by eliminating the previous competitive application process and asking the commission to purchase or obtain low-level THC in quantities that are necessary to reasonably meet the needs of all the registered patients in the low THC oil patient registry. So HB 1425 was favorably reported by the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. So if you live in Georgia, please make sure that you click our link there to send a message to your lawmaker in support of this effort. So let's talk about the big news in Maryland. I'm sure you guys have been tuning in to what's been going on there. Members of the state's House of Delegates has given approval to a pair of legalization bills, and they're kind of like companion legislation, even though they're actually not. The first bill, House Bill 1, lets voters decide at the ballot box if they want to legalize cannabis possession and the sales of cannabis via a binding referendum question in November. Statewide polling in October finds that Maryland residents support this by a very good margin of nearly 2-1. And then the bill that goes along with this, the second bill, is HB 837. It's also advanced, and the way that it complements House Bill 1 is it sets up kind of a limited framework for legalization, establishing personal possession limits, providing for expungement of past convictions, among other issues. Lawmakers have made several changes to the bill to comport with requests from NORML and other reform organizations, and we are continuing to ask for additional reforms. So the big update on this one is that, as you probably know, the House debated the proposal, rejected several GOP-led amendments, and advanced it to the Senate. The Senate Finance Committee held a hearing last week and voted 7-3 to advance this legislation to the Senate floor. So a few things of note. On the Senate side, there's a Senate Bill 833, and this bill was amended to reflect much of what was in HB 1 and 837, along with additional changes. The Senate is expected to approve HB 1 later today, and then of course we will see if the author will be amenable to these amendments, and at that point either they will agree and move it forward, or there will be a conference committee. So in preparation for this advancing to the Senate floor, it's extremely important that everyone in Maryland sends a message to your lawmaker requesting not only improvements but their support for this legislation. So way to go, Maryland. Also, up in the Northeast, New Hampshire, legislation is currently pending House Bill 1598 that would legalize possession of cannabis by adults and establish a system for retail sales. There are some issues with this legislation. It would make cannabis available only at retail-owned stores, which would greatly limit participation in the market and likely run afoul of federal law. Additionally, it would recriminalize possession of 4 ounces or more of edibles. So those are some problematic issues, but overarchingly, there are some good qualities to this bill. The bill passed the House floor with a vote of 169 to 156 and now heads to the Senate. So we encourage anyone in New Hampshire to click our link to message your lawmakers and ask them to amend this effort. All right, let's talk about Pennsylvania. You guys have probably been watching the hearings going on in Pennsylvania with Senator Regan. They've concluded now. They were being hosted in the Senate Law and Justice Committee. And Senator Regan's office has asked NORML to reach out to our friends and followers across Pennsylvania to get them to submit comment and testimony. Now is the time to stand up and speak out about what you would like to see in a legalization plan in Pennsylvania. So to that end, we're working with Lehigh Valley NORML and other local advocates to collect personal testimonies of patients, caregivers, and other Pennsylvania stakeholders so that lawmakers can reflect upon this and know what the consumer's interests are so that they can put those first. So there is a link there where if you live in Pennsylvania, you can submit your testimony, but please note that there's a deadline for you to submit by Monday, April the 4th. So this upcoming Monday will be the deadline for you to submit your testimony. Now, for those of you that are watching from South Carolina, we've got S-150, which is known as the South Carolina Compassionate Care Act, that would allow qualifying patients to use, purchase, and possess medical cannabis with a physician's recommendation. The update here is that after having passed the Senate several weeks ago, House members this week finally began to advance the bill. With only a few weeks left in the session, it is imperative that the House lawmakers hear from you on this bill so that they can advance it before the deadline. So make sure if you live in South Carolina that you click our link there and offer your support of this legislation. Let's talk about South Dakota. Recently, Republican Governor Noem has signed some legislation into law having to do with medical cannabis. But this last week, Governor Noem decided to veto legislation that would have authorized for the automatic removal of marijuana-related convictions from a person's background check. The governor claimed that this enacted reform would set a bad precedent. You can find a blog from me where I discussed my voice. Perhaps I need some more hot coffee. I doubt that'll actually help. I should probably have water. Caffeine. Sorry. I wrote a blog about it, and the voters of South Dakota, they've shown their support for comprehensive marijuana reform. They voted to create a regulated market and adult use market for both medical and cannabis. And despite this obvious will of the voter, Governor Noem is continuing to perpetuate the failed policies of the past. So people with clean records don't deserve to have the rest of their lives derailed by a marijuana possession conviction. And there is a link to our blog post so you can read a little bit more about what's going on in South Dakota. So we've got two bills in Utah that have been signed. So Governor Cox has signed two bills. The first one is Senate Bill 46, which limits states' employers from taking punitive actions against employees who consume cannabis products at home in compliance with their state laws. The measure also forbids judges and juries from discriminating against medical cannabis patients in the course of a judicial proceeding. Additionally, Governor Cox has signed Senate Bill 195, which expands the ability of doctors to recommend medical cannabis products to those patients that live with chronic pain, particularly those who would otherwise be prescribed opioids. So there are two links there that you can click on to thank Governor Cox and your legislators for advancing this important, or these two important bills. So before I go on with more of the state updates, let me come back over to the comments and see if I missed anything. So, there's a lot of comments. All right. Got some more people from Florida, Tennessee, New Jersey, Kentucky. Lots of people from Texas tuning in. Hi, friends. All right. Some people from Georgia. So you guys saw my update that I just gave there. People talking about THC caps in the comments, and absolutely THC caps. Legislators should not be making medical decisions. It should be up to doctors as to the formulations that they think will help their patients. I know certain conditions do better with high THC dosing. Other conditions do better with microdosing. And so, of course, that should be between a patient and their doctor to make the decision on that. And I absolutely agree that THC caps are not the way to go. So cheers to y'all on that. All right, let's see. Ooh, Virginia, North Carolina. Oh, we have someone from Sweden. Hi. Thank you for joining us. All right, we've got a few more things I do want to talk about before I come back over to the comments. So let's talk about Alabama. This is a bit of legislation that not only NORML, but other groups are opposing. So Senate Bill 324 creates restrictions for women who participate in the limited medical program they have in Alabama. In order to purchase medical cannabis products under the law, women between the ages of 25 and 50 would be required to produce a negative pregnancy test, either from their physician or documentation from a certified medical lab that it has been ordered by their physician. So this bill, unfortunately, has passed out of committee and has been quickly advanced to the floor. There are only 4 days left in Alabama's regular session. So it is our great hope that this bill does not advance. Of course, requiring testing to take a medication is not a standard that we would like to see. And it's not something that we see for the vast majority of prescription medications out there. So if you are in Alabama, please help us oppose Senate Bill 324. Also of note, the Colorado House Business Affairs and Labor Committee defeated House Bill 1152. As originally drafted and introduced, the measure provided protections for workers who consumed cannabis off the job and also permitted additional allowances for patients. Lawmakers eventually scaled back the scope of the bill, but it was still rejected. It's unfortunate to see that this legislation did not advance. I know that Colorado NORML and other stakeholders in the state were really working hard to see this legislation move forward. And then finally, there's quite a few bills from Louisiana that I want to cover. You know, in Louisiana, current state law has partially decriminalized cannabis for those that are 21 and older. While this law still maintains penalties for cannabis use and possession, limited personal possession no longer carries the threat of jail time. So talking about House Bill 629, this would prohibit warrantless searches of a person's residence based on the odor of marijuana alone. There's a link there to take action to support that legislation. There's also House Bill 774, which outlines provisions for when a person may file to have their marijuana conviction expunged and also exempts the payment of expungement fees for persons with those convictions. You'll find a link to support that legislation as well. And then there's two bills, House Bill 430 and House Bill 125, that establish a regulated adult use cannabis market. The bill would allow the Department of Agriculture and Forestry to exercise regulatory authority over the cultivation, manufacture, and sale of cannabis for adult recreational use. So definitely support that legislation if you live in Louisiana. Now, I would like to talk about one bill in Louisiana that NORML does oppose, along with other stakeholders in the state. House Bill 700 seeks to provide new criminal penalties for the possession of cannabis by individuals under the age of 18. Young people should not be saddled with criminal records and lifelong penalties, along with the stigma associated with these records. So we, of course, oppose this legislation. And an update is that HB 700 has passed committee and advances to the House floor for discussion on Tuesday, April the 5th. So please make sure that you click our link opposing that effort in Louisiana today if you live there. So, shall we go back to the comments? Let's go back to the comments. If anybody has any questions, I encourage you to drop them now. I've got some media interviews set up here in Texas to talk about not only the rollout of a regulated market in New Mexico, but also to talk about the MORE Act advancing. So let's real quick pivot back to the MORE Act. If you weren't watching earlier, I did want to let you know that history is being made. For only the second time in more than 50 years, Congress has acted to repeal federal cannabis prohibition and allow states to chart their own path. So the MORE Act has passed the House of Representatives, and now it's going to move over to the Senate side. So some of you might have already been following the MORE Act and you know all about it. But for those of you that don't, I want to let you know that the MORE Act provides for expungement and resentencing for nonviolent federal marijuana convictions. It promotes a diverse participation in the state-regulated cannabis industry. It also works to repair racially and economically disparate harms that have been caused through these failed policies of prohibition. So these are extremely important things to be advancing and to be talking about. However, as we move over to the Senate, we cannot take any of this for granted. We absolutely must continue to work hard on pressing our legislators, especially now our federal senators, in supporting the MORE Act. So for those of you that would like to participate, you can go to norml.org/act, and at the very top, you'll see our action having to do with the MORE Act so that you can make sure to let your legislator know. Now, we don't know exactly when it will be addressed in the Senate yet, as it did just pass today. So we'll need to take a little bit of time to evaluate the process and the timeline for that. So we will absolutely follow up with everyone as we have more information. So make sure that you are signed up to our email alert list. Make sure that you are following us on social media, and we'll keep you updated on the next steps to take. So let's go to the Q&A real quick and see if we can find some questions to answer. Does having a medical card in PA prevent you from owning a firearm? So I can't speak exactly to the Pennsylvania laws. Some states have tried to carve out protections for your Second Amendment rights within their state. But at the federal level, there is a prohibition on using firearms or owning firearms if you consume cannabis as a patient or recreationally. Of course, on the 11E application, or Item 11E on the application to purchase a firearm, you would have to lie that you don't use marijuana. So that is a bit of an area of conflict and something that a lot of people are working on. I know here in Texas, DPS has specifically said that they will protect your right to have your concealed handgun license. So there are things that states are working to do to protect the Second Amendment rights for patients and consumers. But I'm sorry, I don't have a more specific answer for you in Pennsylvania, but that's kind of the overarching, too long didn't read on that topic. I see Neil's asking about North Carolina. I haven't seen any advancement in North Carolina, Neil, yet, but if you go to NORML.org/act and you hover over the state of North Carolina, you'll be able to see what bills are currently live there and what actions you can participate in. So I really encourage anyone who would like to do that to go and click on your state and make sure that you're letting your legislators know. Now, first of all, not all states are in a legislative session, so only those that currently have bills moving or active in the legislature will be there. So for example, in Texas, you're not going to see any bills because we're not going to be seeing those until 2023. So let's see. So some people want to know when the Senate will vote on the MORE Act, and we don't have an exact timeline for you, but we will be following up. You know, it just passed the House today. Let's celebrate for today. It's Friday Celebrate Day, but let's not forget that we have a lot of work to do. So make sure that you are going to NORML.org, clicking that MORE action, and make sure that you're letting your senator know that when it does come before them, whether in committee or on the floor, that you encourage them to vote yes for this. All right. Is medical marijuana legal yet in Kentucky? So if you go to NORML.org, you can click on the state laws tab, and that will actually give you all of the current laws in the state that you live in. So I will go to NORML.org, I'll click on that, and I can click on Kentucky laws. And I see here that there is still a criminalization, there is not a legal market, and there's not a medical market in Kentucky. Now, if I go over to my action alert page, I see that in Kentucky, most of the bills have stalled out. It seems like only a few have made the crossover date. So it does look like limited legislation is still moving in Kentucky, but very limited. I encourage you to participate and let your legislator know how you stand on that. I see Mendel is also asking about Kentucky, HB 136. I did an update on it recently, and if you click on the action alert, it will have the most recent update there for you. So just FYI on that. In fact, let me just see if I can find it in here real quick without being awkward. So in Kentucky, the House floor advanced it and it heads to the Senate. But time is short in Kentucky. The session ends in just 2 weeks. So if you live in Kentucky, definitely participate in this action alert and promote people following up with their legislators about this. All right, guys, that's all the questions that I see in the comments. So I just want to thank you for joining me on Friday. So we can celebrate, we can think about, you know, Willie and all of these other people that have been advancing cannabis conversations. I know many of you as advocates at the state and local level continue to carry these conversations forward, no matter where you live, whether you're still working for medical, whether you're working for an adult use market, or if you live in a state that has access to all of these things, there's always a way that we can further work to perfect these programs and to make sure that they really are reflective of the patient and consumer needs. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today so we can celebrate the MORE Act and its passing, and we can also talk about all of the great state legislation that's advancing, although let's be real, there were 2 bills that we oppose. It's not all great, y'all. But we've got a lot of work to do. So Enjoy your weekend, come back Monday, and be ready to participate in more action alerts in your state and at the federal level. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and I will see you next Friday. So take care, guys.